The following is a special edition of California's Golden Parks and is seen exclusively on KIXE television as part of their ongoing support of our California state parks. Well, hello everybody, I'm Huell Hauser, and unfortunately I think all of us would agree that we have a little bit of a financial problem here in California, so much so that our state is planning on closing 70 of our 279 state parks. And this would be a real tragedy because, you know, our state park system is the jewel in the crown of California's. I mean, it's one of the best state park systems in the country. And to close these parks would be a real tragedy. They're so beautiful, they're natural beauty, they're historic significance. They're places that Californians go to get away from the hustle and bustle of urban life and living. We need to keep our California state park system intact just like it is. In fact, we need to be adding to it. But the North State has a tremendous number of wonderful state parks. We've visited a lot of these parks. We're going to take a look at some of the parks we have visited in the last couple of years in Northern California. The first one is in Chico. We were up in Chico on a road trip, and we started off our road trip by visiting Bidwell Mansion, which is a true example, a fine example of California's goals. So right now, let's take a look at that part of the road trip to Chico where we visited Bidwell Mansion. That's one of the parks being slated to be closed by our state government. Okay, it's time to start our road trip, and we're doing that about a mile from that amazing pool over in Bidwell Park. We are standing here with Amber Drake, and Amber, I hope you are dressed for the occasion. This isn't your normal attire, is it?
It's not. I'm wearing clothes from the 1800s.
Absolutely. There's a reason why she's doing that, because we're standing in front of Bidwell Mansion, which is a state historic park. We've just come from Bidwell Park. There's a lot of Bidwell up here in Chico. Bidwell is big in Chico, and actually the name Bidwell is very important to California history. Bring us all up to speed on why John and Annie Bidwell are such important characters in the California history story.
Okay, well, John Bidwell was a very early pioneer. He came out here in 1841 and worked for John Sutter when he first came to California. He was working for Sutter when they found gold, so John was able to be part of the gold rush. His plan being that he would get gold money to purchase land to start a farm. John bought over 20,000 acres.
Right up in here.
Right here. This was the land he really desired. The creek is right beside us here. He was eager to get this land. He thought it'd be very fertile for starting a farm. He then started growing things from all over the world here on his ranch. That would have people come up here and work for him. Later he was able to start the town of Chico then in 1860.
So he founded Chico.
John founded the town of Chico. Yes, he did.
He was involved in things that had statewide implications.
Absolutely. Before he founded Chico, John was part of the Bear Flag Revolt. John was the person who brought the gold-bearing courts to Washington, D.C. that signified us becoming part of the country, brought the papers back, making California a state in 1850.
I'm surprised he never got into politics, that he never ran for governor.
Well, but he did. John actually ran for governor 3 times.
Oh, did he lose 3 times?
He lost 3 times, didn't even get the nomination. The reason John built the mansion was in the 1860s. He was seeking the nomination, and this was a great way to get people's attention to learn more about him.
It looks like the governor should live here.
It sure does. I think John may have built himself a governor's mansion here. He was a congressman at the time that he was building this.
Now, when was this built?
It was completed in 1868.
Boy, so this is old.
Yes, it is.
1868.
1868.
And the fact that he came here 8 years before gold was discovered, so he was truly one of the early California pioneers. He didn't just come,
No.
you know, because gold had been discovered.
No,
He
this
came
was well
way before
that. He came with the first group of people who crossed the Sierra Nevada with wagons.
All right, now we're going to go in and take a look at a little bit of this mansion because, to be honest with you, before you got here this morning, I peeked in a couple of the windows. There's a lot to see in there. But before we go inside, there's got to be a story behind this. I have never seen a magnolia tree like this before.
And you certainly wouldn't expect to see a southern magnolia like this here in Chico. John was an experimental farmer, so he's growing things from all over the world. This was something he got as a sapling and planted it while he was planning the mansion.
So he planted
John Bidwell planted this southern magnolia in 1863, hoping one day it might grow tall enough to shade the veranda he would build there.
That is amazing.
I'm sure this has exceeded anyone's expectations for this
It's amazing that
tree.
it has survived all these years, and I have never seen a magnolia tree this big before.
Nor has anyone else I've spoken to.
You've got to get a lot of comments on this.
Oh, absolutely. Even people from the South are surprised to see a magnolia of this size.
All right, we can't just stand out here under the magnolia tree all day, but you look so nice. Come on, get on my arm, and we're going to go inside the historic Bidwell Mansion, which is the centerpiece, the crown jewel of Bidwell State Historic Park right here in the middle of downtown Chico. We're inside the mansion, and let's head right over here, and I don't know why, I just kind of automatically go to the right in here.
Well, this would be the right place to come. This is the Bidwell's parlor.
The parlor.
Yes, so this is where they would invite you into.
And is this a picture of the parlor back when they lived here?
It is. This is a picture of the parlor when Annie lived here.
Is that Annie in the picture?
It is. She's there seated by the fireplace, and we're able to see how we've been able to reproduce the look of the home, including their 45-star flags.
This is the most amazing thing I think I've ever seen. They made draperies out of flags.
Yes, and this would not be inappropriate at the time. This was really a way to show your patriotism.
Because at one point in our history, it was inappropriate to do something like that with the American flag.
Sure, but now this is then it was a perfectly fine thing for them to do.
This is amazing. Flag curtains in the parlor.
Annie liked to decorate with flags throughout her life, so this was just one place they would have had them.
Now, what are we looking at in here? Obviously, we've got fireplaces. We've got a piano over here, kind of looking out.
This piano did belong to Annie, John's wife. He met her while he was building the mansion in the 1860s. She married him the year the mansion was completed, and he married her at her family's home in D.C., took her to New York to purchase this so she could feel more at home and have a piano here in Chico.
This was his wedding gift.
This is his wedding present to Annie, a square grand piano made of rosewood.
Does it still...
We keep this in tune. It's actually good for pianos to play them. This is something we do allow people to do on tour.
Did Annie play it?
Annie played the piano.
You're dressed like Annie.
Similar too. I could try to play a little something for you.
Yeah, let's go back in time. Annie is going to play for us on the piano. This would have been the
library. Probably both the Bidwell's favorite room in the house. They both love to read.
Wait a minute now. This is another one of these pictures.
It is.
They wouldn't have had flowers like that.
They sure did. Their gardener would take chicken wire and make frameworks.
Just on a regular day or for big parties?
We suspect this would be for special occasions, but you'd take cut flowers and bring them in the home.
Wow. And this was the...
This was the library.
Library. So they would have spent a lot of time in here.
They did spend much time in here. This is kind of like
their den, or...
Yes. After meals, you would retire into this room. Annie was a prohibitionist. She didn't allow drinking or smoking in the home. So after meals, she would actually have men and women come together in here and have political and social conversation. When Annie died, she willed this house to her church, wanted this to be turned into a prohibition school, but instead, that didn't work out. They sold it to the college, and this was turned into a dormitory in the 20s and 30s. In the 40s and 50s, this was used as classrooms and offices.
You mean this was used as a dormitory in the 20s and 30s? It's amazing. It's still standing.
It says a lot about college students back then that they respected the home.
Wow.
The state parks has been restoring the mansion since 1964.
That's when it became a state historic park. I'm just wondering. I'm not sure why we're going in here,
Oh,
but
well, this is a great room. This was John's home office. He did have offices downtown, but he would be able to do business right here.
so this is where he ran for governor 3 times and lost.
He did unsuccessfully run for governor. John also ran for president of the United States. In 1892, he was 72 years old, but he ran on the Prohibition ticket, and I'm sure Annie respected that very much.
Well, Annie probably got him to run. Was he so he was not a drinker?
Not after he met Annie.
It's called Bidwell Mansion today, and I imagine back in 1868 when it was built, it was really considered a mansion up here, wasn't it?
Oh, certainly. When you consider you're in the middle of farmland, it would have been very unexpected to find a home with 26 rooms. There's about 10,000 square feet
This
here.
was a big deal.
This was a big deal.
Okay, you have brought us up to the 2nd floor because you said there is still one more room that you want to show us in the Bidwell Mansion, and it's not any of these bedrooms, it's another room.
It is something fairly unexpected here. John had running water here with the use of a hydraulic ram, pumping water into the home, so he was able to have bathrooms with flush toilets.
So here is the bathroom right here, and this gives new meaning to the word throne. That is a throne right there.
It's quite a toilet, yes. John even got an elephant trunk toilet here.
So wait a minute, that's an elephant trunk toilet.
Apparently this is the design here that, yes, your toilet looks like an elephant's trunk and raised from the ground to accommodate the plumbing, but certainly unlike anything people had experienced. Most people who came here were used to using outhouses.
So they probably had guests who wanted to come here just to see the toilet.
I wonder. I think a lot of guests who came here thought this was a strange thing to have. Bringing your outhouse into the home was kind of an unusual idea at that point.
Well, I hate to... It is kind of strange. I've never seen an elephant trunk toilet before in my life.
Nor have I. No, I'm sure this was unexpected.
I'm glad it's still here, because this has to be a high point of the tour.
It certainly is. Something so unusual like that, yes.
Does it still work?
No, we have no running water in the mansion. But
Okay, we are ending our tour on this side of the house, which, Amber, you say is your favorite side of the house.
it sure is my favorite side of the house. I love the view of the mansion from here, and I'm sure that the Bidwells loved their view of the creek from this side of the mansion.
And these are, they would have had roses out here?
Very likely they did, yes.
Maybe the arbor would have been there?
Yeah, so a place for Annie to enjoy nature out here.
So you've really done a good job in restoring this back to the way it really was back in 1868.
The state parks, that's what they're striving to do, yes, with all these decades of restoration to get it back like it was in the Bidwell's time.
This is an amazing place, and when you think that Bidwell Park, the city park, which is just right over here, was donated by the Bidwells, their home is now a state historic park, and they did something else with some of their land here as well, didn't they?
They did. In the 1880s, John donated land to the state to become a college. Right here where his cherry orchard was, he gave up 8 acres of land, and that's what's become Chico State today.
So the park, and the university campus are all gifts of the Bidwell family.
Yes.
That is amazing. And you know, I'm from Southern California, and I don't think people in Southern California really know the name Bidwell the way they should. Do you?
I don't think so. John wasn't a self-promoter. People are always surprised to find that he didn't name this whole town Bidwell. Certainly had many opportunities to name things after himself. But I think it's kind of interesting because of all the things that he did. Now people do know who he is because of how important he is to California history and not just to our local history.
Well, he was never elected governor,
No.
and he was never elected president,
No.
but he and his wife Annie certainly made major contributions not only to the whole state of California, but particular to the Chico area. And today, this home is a state historic park here for all of us to enjoy and learn more about this remarkable couple who were true pioneers here in California.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for the tour.
Indeed.
Now what's happening is that various support groups and associations are springing up or going into action to try to keep these state parks open, and that's exactly what's happening at Bidwell Mansion. The Bidwell Mansion Association, and we're putting the website and the phone number down right now. If you want to help Bidwell Mansion stay open, you can contact those good people. Hopefully this will be one of the parks, one of the 70 parks that remains open instead of being closed. Another place we visited, boy, was just a little place in Red Bluff. But boy, historically, it doesn't get any more significant. We're talking about the Ide Adobe State Historic Park. We visited there a couple of years ago. It's just a little place, but it's a wonderful place. Again, it's one of those parks slated to be closed. It happened on June 14, 1846, in Sonoma, as a group of 33 American settlers overthrew the Mexican governance of Northern California. With no violence or bloodshed at all, they captured Mexican General Mariano Vallejo, who had been in charge, and set up their own government. It was called the Bear Flag Republic, and each year on this plaza in Sonoma, where it actually happened over 150 years ago, the native sons of the Golden West reenact this momentous bit of California history, including the raising of the bear flag.
This flag that we see here in front of us today is a commercially available reproduction of a typical bear flag from 1846 and has come to us to be accepted as the flag of the California Republic. But as we do a little bit more research, we find that California's bear flag really is California's bear flags, plural, because there are so many different designs from which to take some of these reproductions from.
Okay, so we've got them all out here, at least the ones we know of.
So what we thought we'd do today is look through some of them in a chronological order. Curiously enough, this is the one that we call the bear flag, but it may not have been the first flag of the California Republic. This next one here is called the Peter Storm flag. This is believed to have been made the evening of June 13th and may have accompanied the Bear Flag Party on their trip from the Napa Valley to Sonoma here.
Now on this one, the bear is standing
and pawing at the star. Now one of the things about the bear flags was, as word spread, we know that the people were told the flag has a bear, a star, and a stripe. And so what we're going to see today is flags with bears, stars, and stripe. But remember, there were no flag companies till 1847, so they're all homemade. In fact, until then, all flags were homemade. So this is called the Peter Storm flag. Interestingly enough, the legend about the other flag is that it was made from flannel underwear. This one is believed to have been made from diapers.
Really?
Yeah, from the Grigsby Ranch.
All right, that's number 2.
Okay, one of the other interesting things is this flag here. Almost all the surviving bear flag and bear flag drawings and photographs show the bear facing the pole. Yet a lot of the drawings that were done contemporarily show the pole being over here and the bear facing off the pole. So again, we have a problem with communication in the 19th century. They didn't tell them which way the bear faced.
We also have a problem with the way the bear looks.
Well, that's right. In fact,
that does not look like a bear to me.
The local Californios called it a cochino, or a small pig. And
yeah,
so,
because look at this one. This one really looks like a pig over here.
Looks like a wombat.
Did they just do that because they were crudely drawing it?
They were crudely drawn, and also most of these were made in great haste.
Yeah.
So the third flag here, this is the one that was hoisted today during our reenactment, and you'll notice the fact that this one is more than just a reproduction. This is a replication. In other words, an attempt was made here to duplicate the fabric, the construction method, crude running stitches and a saddler stitch like Duell might have done. The bear and the star are mixed or made with a locally made paint, which is a combination of Venetian red, brick dust, and berry juice, like we think the original one was, and then India ink lettering. What's curious about this one is this is the one we know to be the Todd flag, and these two people holding it are descendants of William Todd. William Todd was one of the 33 bear flaggers. Wow. After this event, he returned to the east, but what's interesting is Todd was a nephew of Mary Todd, who later went on to marry an obscure Illinois politician, Abraham Lincoln. So here we have the flags of California. Long live the California Republic!
The Bear Flag Republic lasted only 25 days before the bear flag itself was lowered and the stars and stripes were raised as California became a territory of the United States. But history will record that for that 25 days, we were technically a self-declared Bear Flag Republic with a president by the name of William Brown Ide. And to find out more about President Ide, next we travel north to the community of Red Bluff. Our destination, the William Brown Ide Adobe State Historic Park. And here we are at the William B. Ide Adobe State Historic Park. The plaque reads, "This adobe house, built by William B. Ide, reputedly about 1850, represents a typical frontier structure of the American period. Ide, who came to California with his family in 1845, was the first and only president of the California Republic under the Bear Flag Party proclamation of June 14th, 1846. And there is the Ide Adobe, the historic adobe right over there. And here are our William Brown Ide experts right here. Bob Grace, who's been here at this park for over 20 years as a ranger. Right. And Ben Hughes, who's a historian who knows everything there is to know about William Brown Ide. And the first thing we have to talk about, Bob, has nothing to do with Ide probably, but this oak tree is absolutely amazing.
It's a record tree. It's probably about 300 to 400 years old, and was already a huge giant when the adobe was built about 150 years ago.
Now, Ben, tell us about William Brown Ide.
Well, William Brown Ide was associated with the Bear Flag Revolt, and he became the leader of the revolt in the later stages of the revolt. He wrote the proclamation that established the California Republic.
What kind of a guy was he? What do we know about him?
Well, we don't know a great deal about him. We've got a couple of descriptions. William Baldridge said he was a very energetic man who was one of those get-it-done people. I have a description that was written by a midshipman who went to Sonoma about the time of the revolt, and he said, on arriving, found a party of 14 men, mostly dressed in buckskins, and we were met halfway across the square by a plain man about 50 years old in his shirt sleeves, with a pair of pantaloons which had certainly seen better days, and to my eyes his shoes looked as if they had not seen the outside of one of Day and Martin's blacking bottles in 6 months. His hat was somewhat more holy than righteous. This man was Captain Ide, and he welcomed us to Sonoma.
So I'm getting this mental picture. We don't really have any other pictures to go on, do we? We have a couple here, and that in itself is kind of interesting.
Yes, well, we have an old family album, and William B. Ide made a trip back east in 1850. This came from New England, this book. And there is a photo in there labeled William B. Ide.
Let's take a look at it.
All right. That would be this one right
here. So is that him right there?
Well, it may be.
What do you mean it may be?
It's labeled William B. Ide. By examining the book further, we found that there were some errors in identification that we can document for sure. So we're not quite sure if this was Ide or not, but this is as close as we can come to an actual photo of it.
So this is the only photo we have of William B. Ide, and this might not be William B. Ide.
Might not.
You would think the president would be photographed a lot.
Well, it was the early days of photography.
Yeah.
So,
and they were on the frontier.
Right. So, and this picture was taken back east. He was the leader. He was chosen leader. He called himself Commander-in-Chief or just simply Commander. And many historians refer to him as the President of the California Republic. So our President is also the Commander-in-Chief. So if the Commander-in-Chief is the President, maybe he was the President, but it's a matter of semantics.
And the plaque here says President. The brochures all say President, but you're very adamant that he wasn't the President.
Well, he never claimed to be the President. At one point in time, Stockton, who was the military commander in California during the Bear Flag Revolt, said that he was the governor of California.
That Ide was the governor.
That Ide was the governor of California.
But president has such a wonderful sound to it.
And probably the first place that in my research I've ever found him referred to as the president was in a speech by Mariano Vallejo in 1876 at Sonoma. And Vallejo, who was one of the people captured during the Bear Flag Revolt, referred to William B. Ide as the president of the California Republic. And that title has pretty well stuck through the history up till today.
Why do we know so little about William Brown Ide? Why is his name not a household word?
Well, William Brown Ide didn't write a great deal about himself. He wrote documents and what have you, and he was a judge and he did a number of other things. But he was a very unassuming man. He just saw jobs that needed to be done and he did them.
And he just happened to be, I guess you'd say, at the right place at the right time, get tapped on the shoulder and say, you're the man.
Definitely, that's the situation. And I think the other thing is, 3 years after the Bear Flag Revolt, California goes into the California Gold Rush and everything that happened before becomes obscure.
Yeah,
including
literally his name.
Including William B. Ide.
His face.
We don't know what he looked like. Not for certain.
The good folks at the William B. Ide Interpretive Association in Red Bluff have sprung into action. We're going to put their phone number and address and everything up on the screen right now if you want to help keep this wonderful little Adobe celebrating California's first and only president. You can do so right now. Now, one of the places that everybody in California, and I can't believe this one's on the closure list, everybody in California agrees that the Joss House in Weaverville is one of our state's true treasures. It's one of the finest state parks we have. It's slated to be closed. How they came up with this list, I will never know. But on a recent road trip to Weaverville, we visited the Joss House. Let's take a look at that right now. This is a real part of California Chinese history. Boy, look at this with the wind blowing, the leaves, and the sun coming down. This is absolutely spectacular and very historic. We have been passed off by Judy to the next leg in our Weaverville Marathon road trip. Your name, sir, is?
My name's Jack Frost.
Okay, now we are in probably the most historic spot in Weaverville, wouldn't you say? I know there are a lot of historic spots.
There are many, many historic spots, but this one's probably the most historic and the most unusual.
And it is a historic state park.
Yes.
So a lot of people come here.
Oh, we have many people from all over the world that come, and mainly a lot of Chinese and people from Taiwan also that come every year just to see this.
Because I would imagine, just like so many gold rush towns in California, there used to be a huge Chinese population here in Weaverville.
Yes, there were as many as 2,000 Chinese here during the gold rush period, trying to make their wealth like everyone else, learning very quickly that wealth was also in businesses, but wealth was also in their culture and in their ancestors.
And that's what this is all about.
That's
and
exactly right.
This is really, isn't this about their religion as well?
Their religion and their faith, their culture and history. It represents about 1,800 years sitting here in Weaverville, of all places.
How long has this been here?
This has been here 137 years.
Just like this.
Yes.
This is the original structure.
All original. The structure itself was built with local materials, but the interior of this temple was shipped over from China.
Wow. So was this the community center? Was this the religious center? Was this... What role did this play in the Chinese community here?
This was the center of the community. It had their meeting hall, it had their temple for their faith, it had their school for their children also. It also had their post office, which was very important.
So everything was here.
Everything was here.
And it's been preserved. Now, it's beautiful on the outside.
Can we go inside?
We sure can.
How
yes.
do we get in? I guess, look at this.
Curved paths were very typical for Chinese temples because evil has lost the ability to change its ways and will only travel on straight lines, not on this curved path.
So we go around the curve here, and look at this. Are these blue tiles?
Well, the tiles are actually painted on this structure. In China, it would have been traditional to have had blue porcelain tile work. And what that did from a distance, it identified it as a temple because the Chinese recognized the structure that reflects the color of the sky or the color of heaven will always be the temple.
So this is painted on, this is
painted.
wood.
It's wood. And this is the last wooden temple in North America sitting here.
Look at this up here. Look at the color, the beautiful blue, the bright color that stayed that way because the sun hasn't faded it out.
Right. This is a very special temple. It faces due north, which is hard for a lot of our visitors to understand that you're actually facing north on this side of the building. But it was all part of the practice of feng shui. This had to be built the same here in Weaverville as if it had been built in China itself.
Were there many of these in this part of California? Or?
California had many joss houses over a period of time.
They were all called joss houses.
They were all called joss houses, but the Chinese today don't recognize that as a Chinese phrase that they can understand because it came from the Portuguese sailors who were calling this Casa de Dios, meaning the house of God.
Now, how many of them were built in California? Lots of them?
There were a lot of them.
Because
Unfortunately,
you don't see many.
You only have 5 left in the whole state. The unfortunate thing was that after 1882, when California adopted the new federal Chinese exclusion laws, many communities destroyed the temple to discourage the Chinese trying to get them to go home.
Because, you know, that's part of the bad chapter in California history, the way we treated the Chinese in the 1880s, 1890s. It wasn't a pretty picture.
It wasn't a pretty picture, and we don't try to avoid it in our interpretation here. It was really part of California.
But on a positive note, this was saved.
This was saved through the efforts of the local Chinese and California state parks also.
Well, let's go inside. Through the red door, and red was an important color,
Red was
wasn't
an
it?
important color. It meant that good luck existed inside. But the temple doors, once I open them, we will only be able to go in a straight line for a very short distance before we have to be able to go around the real true temple door, again proving that we're not an evil spirit who has lost the ability to change.
Wow, this is so interesting. This is so interesting. We're going, look at this, inside the Joss house. Look at the doors that are waiting for us right inside the red doors. We have to go around those. Okay, we are inside the, I keep wanting to call it a temple, but it's not really a temple technically, is it?
Well, it is a temple, but a lot of the Chinese who visit here, they refer to it also as a school where they learn about their history and their culture.
But this looks very religious. Is this Buddhist? Is it?
Well, it's Buddhist, Taoist, and Confucius. But primarily Taoist, the oldest faith in China that goes back over 2,500 years.
Wow, this is just, and this has always been here like this?
It's always been this way. The old black and white photographs from the turn of the century show it just basically like this. The Chinese kept it in very good shape until they turned it over to the California state parks and always asked that it be maintained and preserved as it is, not changed.
So this is exactly as it was the day they turned it over to California State Park.
Yes, all we have done is just to preserve it, to clean it, maintain it as is.
This has got to be, well, I guess in China, this isn't even considered old.
No, and we're reminded of that by Chinese visitors all the time.
But people in this country and in California especially, this is a true treasure.
It really is. It's referred to locally as the oldest continuously used Chinese temple in California.
This is a miracle that this exists.
It really is. Many, many communities lost their temples, lost their Chinese communities, but Weaverville was very, very tolerant towards the Chinese. They had worked very hard with their businesses here, very integral part of the community for many, many years.
Okay, we have now come back outside the Joss house to meet up with this lady right here, because Jack has already told us that at one time there were over 2,000 Chinese living and working right here in Weaverville. How many Chinese are in Weaverville today?
You were looking at her.
You're it?
I am. I am the descendant of one of the builders, first builders here.
Oh, wow.
Yes. My great-grandfather came over in the mid-1800s. And then he came back, went back over to China and brought my grandfather. And my grandfather decided he wanted to stay and wasn't doing well in the gold mining business. So he had to stay and pay his debts.
And your family has been here
yes,
ever since.
Yes. And my father, Moon Lee, was born and raised here.
Now, why did you stay, your family stay, and everyone else left?
Oh, I guess they made their money. No, I love Weaverville. I've traveled all over the world several times, and Weaverville is my home.
And when you're here, and you're standing here in juxtaposition to the Joss house, and actually this whole area of town that we're standing in here now used to be the Chinese district, didn't it?
That is correct. And my father was born across the street where North Valley Bank is now. And my grandmother brought him over and baptized him here when he was 3 days old. Then when I was born, I was baptized here, my daughter was baptized here, and my grandson.
So you feel this wonderful
yes, I do.
connection.
I do. It's my legacy.
In
and
fact,
I am so
you
proud.
asked that we do the interview here by the Joss house.
Right, that's correct.
Because?
Because I love the Joss house, and this is my legacy, and I am proud to say so. I still feel the spirits. I still feel the spirits.
Well, the good folks in Weaverville have set up the Weaverville Joss House Association. We're going to put the website and the phone number on the screen once again. Get involved. I'm not sure how they're planning on hoping to keep this place open, but it needs to be kept open and not closed. Can you imagine future generations not being able to visit the Joss house? Then we end up with, boy, this was an interesting little place, Old Town Shasta. It's right on both sides of the road near Redding. It's a wonderful piece of California history. Once again, we visited Old Shasta, did a whole program about it. It's slated to be closed, so let's take a look at that as well. Hello everybody, I'm Huell Hauser, and here we are on the side of Highway 299, about 4 miles west of Redding, California, in Shasta County. Now, you know, when you're traveling around our state and you're whizzing down the highway and you look over and see things, many times there's more to them than initially meets the eye. For example, right over here, look at these buildings. They're kind of old and fallen down. A lot of them have already fallen down. Doesn't look very interesting, does it? But if you get out and look around and investigate just a little bit, you'll discover that those old buildings over there are very much a part of California's rich history, and they are still very much alive. And if you're curious what in the world we're talking about, you're invited to spend the day with us in one of California's golden parks.
I love you, California. You're the greatest state of all. I love you in the winter, summer, spring, and in the fall.
Well, this is going to be very interesting. I'm standing here with Linda Cooper, and Linda, explain to everybody exactly where we are and why this place is so important to California history.
Well, you're standing in Shasta, which is now Shasta State Historic Park, and this was the most northern gold strike in California. After the discovery at Marshall's Gold, this was the place to be. And the reason why is because all the wagon roads ended here. If you wanted to take your bath here, if you needed to shop here, buy your gold pans here, you shopped here. This is where the wagon trains stopped.
There was a lot of activity here. Not as much activity as there is today. This is a very busy highway. Lots of trucks and cars and tourists and people coming by. But this was a pretty bustling place back then too, wasn't it?
Very bustling. I mean, this is where the county seat was. This is where you came to get married. This is where you were put in jail. This is where, like I said, you shopped, you bought your baked goods right here, yes.
This was kind of like a shopping center for miners, right?
Yeah, as we tell the school children, this was the shopping mall for the miners.
All right, now what have we got here? We've got a hardware store, Bull Baker Company hardware store. Now, are these all original buildings? Are we looking at the original building right here?
Yes, yes we are. And you know, our visitors ask us, why the iron doors?
Why the iron doors?
Okay, big fire here in Shasta. They were originally wooden buildings in, you know, like early 1850s. After the fire, the city decided to build with brick and the iron doors so that the buildings wouldn't burn down.
And that's why at least the shell of the buildings are still here.
Yes.
Now what are we looking at here? Here's the drugstore. That would have been an important place. Here is here's dry goods over here. So this would have really been, can we walk in over here? Let's go in the dry goods store.
Thank you.
This would have been a very busy place right here.
Absolutely, absolutely. In a little bit, you'll see a real dry goods store down the street that has still been in operation since the 1850s.
Oh, really?
Yes.
So there's more here than just these empty shells.
That's right. These serve as a reminder. They get photographed a lot just because architecturally they look wonderful now, but they serve as a reminder, the remnants of the gold rush period in California history.
Now, Linda, would these have been where the houses would have been right in here?
Actually, these would have been still businesses in this area. The houses were built behind their businesses. So what a short commute to be able to come down to your house and just walk down some stairs right into your business.
And I'm looking over your shoulder. What is this built in the side of the hill here?
This is a refrigerator, Huel, just to use today's terms. This was a meat locker for the butcher shop, so another remnant, another reminder of Shasta in her heydays. And they would bring ice down from a mountain at Whiskey Town. And they would keep big blocks of ice here, and it would keep the meat cool. In some homes in Shasta today, they still have these built into their homes.
Wow, look at this.
This was a real necessity without refrigeration.
And this would have been stacked with meat iced down from ice from up on the mountain.
That's right.
Well, they were practical, and they had to be, didn't they?
Well, they did. You're absolutely right.
Now, what about the miners? Weren't they living in tents? They weren't living in buildings, were they?
Good call. The first miners had to live in tents, lean-tos, you name it. And then they realized it was serious business up here, $100,000 worth of gold going out a week, so then they decided to dig roots.
Ah, and they stayed here.
And they stayed here, and they needed the supplies here, which is why they built the town.
Well, now, I've seen old pictures. This was a thriving town, and it was thriving back in the 50s, 60s, 70s.
Yes, the 50s and 60s were really the heyday of Shasta.
How many people would have lived here?
Oh, there was at least like 25,000 people here.
You're
and
kidding.
We're talking about the 1850s and the 1860s.
25,000 people.
Yes. And that is another reason why this served as a Shasta County seat up until 1888. This was a seat of government right here for Shasta County for 30 years.
This was the big town.
This was the town.
Continuing our walking tour, Linda, now we've come upon a building that looks like there's still something going on inside.
You're absolutely right. This building has been in continuous use since 1856 here in Shasta.
Now the sign here says this is the, how do you pronounce this?
That's Litch Store.
The Litch Store, Are you Mr. Litch?
Well, I act as Mr. Litch, right?
And what would have been going on in here, Mr. Litch?
Well, at that time, it started out 1856 as a grocery store. And then later on, Frank Litch bought the store in 1873, and he actually started turning into a general merchandise store. And so actually it was more like a one-stop shopping going into, if you compare it to today's Walmart, you can almost, going back, you know, in that time, 1880s, like a Walmart of that time.
Well, let's go inside and take a look. I got my credit card. Do you take credit cards?
Well, if you're a trustworthy individual and you're honest, we'll extend credit to you.
Now this is amazing. This is the way the store would have looked in the 1880s. Now this would have been way too sophisticated for those early miners back in the 1850s.
Well, probably so, but still in 1850, they started building actually a number of general merchandise stores, especially in the town of Shasta, because it's more like a port city at that time. All the supplies, everything had to be purchased there. So there were, again, I agree though, probably in the 1880s, this was probably a little bit more sophisticated from the original.
This really has a little bit of everything. Now, how have you stocked your shelves? What have you decided to have here? What have you decided to put up on the shelves?
Well, actually, they decided when actually the state of California acquired it in 1960 from the Litch family, about a third of the items are already here, the inventory. In fact, they had a majority next door in storage, and in the back they had a small Pioneer Museum set up. So towards the end, about 1960 when they closed, they sort of have a store, a museum type setup. When the state came in, they actually removed everything from the modern times and replaced it with the original from the 1880s.
So some of this is original merchandise from this store.
Absolutely.
Show us something that would have actually been here.
Here's something interesting. You see all the shoes? Now, as you go up, they look brand new as far as the soles, but they're over 100 years old. They were all packed away, and you see the boxes down here in the shoe boxes.
So these are the original shoe boxes down here.
Yeah, they were actually packed away next door.
And what about these old hats?
Now, these are replicas, but in the first case in front, as we go out, you can see are the original. These are replicas of that time.
Now, these would have been miners' hats.
Miners' hats, right, and casual hats. Some were for evening wear.
And look over here, you've got dishes.
Dishes, right. You know, this town was very sophisticated during the 1800s, too. You had to find some of the finest wines, some of the finest meals, and everything was served right in this area.
And you also had spittoons.
The famous spittoons, right. As you can see, we have quite a tobacco section up there, and then most of the men did chew tobacco. At that time, actually, they would go in the back of the store. The back of the store was for the men only. Women really didn't go back there, so the men could be back there chewing tobacco and spitting into the spittoon, playing cards, telling stories and things like that. Wow. So the women stayed away from that area.
Was this the town gathering place? I'm going to put this spittoon back down. I don't think I want. You can't actually purchase anything here.
No, you can't.
Just look at it.
Right.
Would this have been the town gathering place?
It would have been, right. And as I think you'll be visiting the bakery shortly, it was also a town gathering place.
Because I'm just looking at all of this stuff. These are your scales where you would have, what? Well, look over here. Beans, peas, lima beans. What is that?
That's rice. Rice
And coffee.
Coffee.
So they would have had everything here. Now these look like old containers.
They are. They are the original containers from the 1880s. Now some are replicas, though, good replicas of that period.
Can we go back there and take a look at those? Because this is really piquing my interest back here. Look at this old.
Medicines we have here too. Oh, this is medicines.
And this would have been
that's
baking
powder, right?
Mustard. And what about all these bottles?
Oh, interesting. You have some. Here is very famous for the children. This was, in fact, let me go to the next bottle here. Then the next shelf there, we can take a look. I'm sorry.
Right,
yeah, there you are. Yeah, now this actually was root beer. This
beer.
This would make 5 gallons of root beer. Take this, water, and some yeast, give that bubbly effect, and you have 5 gallons of root beer from a small container like that.
Now this isn't the original.
That's the original.
Wonder what that would taste like today.
Good root beer.
Aged root beer. Aged.
Aged. A lot of this stuff is vanilla and different extracts.
Boy, stomach
That was a cure-all. If you had a stomach ache, that's what you take. That was actually alcohol, food coloring, and flavoring.
So were people taking it for stomach ailments or because they wanted to drink a little bit of alcohol?
And Colonel Hostetler made a fortune off of this. When he died, he was worth about $18 million.
From selling this kind of stuff?
That's right.
Snake oil salesman.
Snake oil. Yeah, these are Levi jeans. In fact, the Litch store was one of the first in Northern California to sell Levi jeans. This is a copy now of the very first patented pair in 1873. In fact, you know, his first year, he sold over 21,000 for $2 a set. Now, it was the jacket and the pant in 1873.
So this store was selling a lot of Levi jeans.
Right. Work pants for the miners, the
and
farmers.
These are kind of collector's items themselves today.
Absolutely.
Wow, there's so much to see when you come in here, and everything here has a story connected with it.
Absolutely. And in fact, each item, as we have many school children that come during the week for regular tours, and I explain what you see is also you can tell how the people lived back then. You know, it was interesting just to see how they were able to function without all the modern conveniences that we have today.
Yeah.
One of the big things I always bring up, think of no electricity. So as you go through the store, there's nothing here that's connected with electricity or with automobiles, horse and buggies and things like that.
Well, this has certainly been an education. Thank you very, very much. There is so much to see in here. I'm just looking up at your ceiling.
Oh, yes.
There was as much hanging from the ceiling as there was on the shelf.
They try to utilize all the space. In fact, most general merchandise across the United States were sort of long, narrow, and high ceilings, mainly for that purpose, for displaying.
Boy, we could spend the whole day in your store. Okay, we have left the Bloom Bakery and we've come 2 doors down. This looks like another store.
Yes, it is. It's the sales area for the park. And we're operated by the Town of Shasta Interpretive Association.
So what do you all do? You sell stuff in here for
Yes,
what
we
reason?
do. So we can earn some money and have buy the state park things they need.
So you're like a support group
Yes,
for the
we
state
are.
park.
Yes, we are.
And this is like a little general store that actually sells stuff because you can't buy anything next door in the Litch store.
Can't buy anything at the museum, but we try to get items that are similar to what's in the museum.
I gotta tell you, have you ever tried any of these pretzels?
I did have one, and they're very good.
These are great pretzels. You don't sell beer in here, do you, to go along with the pretzels?
Sorry, no beer.
You know, this is one of the widest highways in California, too, just because of that fire I was talking about. When they had that fire early on with those wood structures, they decided to make the highway really wide so that if a fire started on one side of the street, it wouldn't jump and go to the other side.
Isn't that interesting? Things like that, little bits of information that you wouldn't know if you hadn't studied your history.
That's right. Another thing the Shastinians, as I sometimes call them, prided themselves on is that this was the longest row of brick buildings north of San Francisco.
Really?
And they competed with San Francisco. They sold Shakespeare here. They had champagne and oysters at the Empire Hotel. So, yeah, these buildings were well known north of San Francisco.
Did I see something where this was called the Queen City?
That's right, the Queen City of the North.
We're crossing the street because there's something over here Linda wanted to show us that is, well, this is not actually part of the park, is it?
No, we're not actually, but we've been here since long before the park.
All right, your name is?
I'm Bud Shuppleton.
And what are we standing in front of here?
We're standing in front of the Hall of Western Star. It's the oldest Masonic lodge in California.
The oldest Masonic hall, and I see the sign says erected in 1853, so when people came here for the gold rush, they had to have a bakery, they had to have an assay office, they had to have a general store, and they also had to have a Masonic lodge?
A social and fraternal place as well. And the Masonic Lodge was usually the center, or one of the focal points of any city of any size or a mining camp as well.
So this is a very historic place.
Exactly.
Do people think this is part of the park when they're here?
Usually because we are in the middle, basically, of the park itself. But we are an island unto ourselves, still privately owned and maintained.
Well, you still operate out of here. You still have lodge meetings?
We meet here at least once a month for our business meeting, and we're usually doing something probably every week. We have some kind of activity going on, either with the community or within ourselves.
And how do you feel about your location? Because this has got to like take you back in time and make you think about what those old Masons would have been doing here in 1853 when this was a gold rush town.
That's kind of our attitude. We've maintained our building in that period, and occasionally we dress in period costumes to go along with activities in the park itself. And we really are proud of our building and where we are in the community.
Well, our Masonic adventure continues because as we were leaving, Bud, you invited us to come inside. For what reason?
Basically to see our lodge room as it would have been in 1854.
So this is pretty much exactly the way it was in 1854?
Minus some of the really heavy Victorian wallpapering and things like that, but basically the furniture is all original. Our original wood stove sits where it did in 1854.
So wait a minute, this is where they would have all gathered around the stove because it got cold up here in the wintertime.
The first guys here at the meeting built the fire, and they all got to sit there. Everybody else sat over here and got cold.
And how do you know this is exactly the way it looked?
We have pictures in the late 1870s, and virtually everything is intact. The station chairs, the side chairs, everybody is still very much original. Of course, we have changed the lights to electrified
yeah, but
kerosene.
These would have been the kind of, they would have been the kind of fixtures they would have had.
We researched for months to try to find something very similar to what we had.
And what do you think those guys would have been talking about when they were sitting around in here? Would they have been talking about their lives and what was going on in California at that time?
What they knew of it, because we were here before the state was California, and they would have been talking about what was happening with the new state government and what was going on in the community, who's getting the gold, where it's being found, things like that. But they never discussed politics. We don't do that. That's left outside.
If the walls of this room could
talk, there would be stories.
Okay, we are now in the old courthouse, which is part of the park. And Linda, this didn't start as a courthouse, did it?
No, it was originally 3 offices, like a newspaper office functioned out of this building, but then the town was growing so fast they needed a county seat of government. So they evicted the tenants and turned this into the courthouse from 1862. Functioned as one, the county seat, until 1888 when the seat was moved to Reading.
All right, now inside the old courthouse is the old courtroom. And this is amazing that you all have restored it like this. It's kind of echoey in here. What all went on inside this place?
This is where people were married. This is where they conducted their business for their real estate transactions. And this is where people were tried and sent to jail. Justice was literally swift. The jail's right down below us.
Okay, we've come downstairs, and you're right, Linda. This jail was right literally underneath the courtroom.
That's right. 13 unlucky stairs down to the jail.
All right, so you were found guilty upstairs.
That's right.
You came downstairs, and that's got to be the jail in here.
That's right. Sometimes when I've had to answer the alarm at night, boy, those county sheriffs love this jail. They say they ought to build them this way.
Really? Can we go in?
Well, for you, yes.
Boy, now this was a jail, wasn't it?
Feel how heavy this door is.
Whoa.
Isn't that amazing?
Oh my gosh. Wait a minute, what is this?
They would have strapped that around your waist if you were a very dangerous criminal, and to make sure that you couldn't escape, double security for them.
These would have been your leg ankle irons.
That's right.
And this is literally a ball and chain.
That's right.
Oh my gosh. And this is original.
This is original, yes.
And here's the little cot. You got a game of cards going on over here. It would have had to have been solitaire because there's only one person to a cell, right?
That's right. For 25 cents, they give you a deck of cards. The meals were free, though. They brought in the meals from the Empire Hotel next door. And but you'd have to pay for your chewing tobacco or your cigar or something like that.
Let's close this door and see what it would be like to be inside this thing. Boy, when it closes, it closes.
You're in here pretty tight, yes. Yes.
Well, this has certainly been a lot of fun, Linda. Thank you so much. Now, how many thousand people come through here and visit this park every year?
We have 50,000 visitors a year, but part of those visitors are school groups. We see 100 children a day throughout the school year, about 4 months a year.
They must love the general store, the bakery, the jail downstairs, the courthouse. They must, I mean, this is California history at its best.
I call this state park's best kept secret. People stop, they visit, they just can't believe the depth, what they see beyond just the ruins, as you said, in the road.
Well, that's the way we're back where we started the program, right out here on the side of Highway 299, and literally when you drive by and look over and just see those old fallen down old brick buildings over there, you would never know.
You'd never guess. People are always pleasantly surprised.
Well, we have been very pleasantly surprised. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
The old town of Shasta, it was called the Queen City. This is where it all happened, right here, back during the gold rush.
That's right, the Queen City of the North.
This was a bustling place, and it is still a wonderful, wonderful example of California's golden parks.
I love you, California. You're the greatest state of all. I love you in the winter, summer, spring, and in the fall. I love your fertile valleys, your dear mountains I adore. I love your grand old oceans, and I love a rugged shore.
Save Old Shasta. The good folks at the Shasta Historical Society have banded together to try to save Old Shasta. I'm putting the phone number on the screen if you want to get involved in that. 70 parks, almost a quarter of our state's parks, are slated to be closed due to budget restrictions. It's almost unthinkable that future generations of Californians won't be able to visit these parks for their scenic beauty, for their historical significance. We got to do something to save, and actually, let's just not save our park system, let's expand our park system and make it even better. Now, you know, I'm a positive person by nature, so let's end up with one of the parks in Northern California and North State that is not slated to be closed. I have a feeling it's not slated to be closed because nobody's there. It's very remote. The only way you can get there is by boat. It's located in northeast Shasta County. It's called Ahjumawi State Park, and boy is it isolated, and boy is it beautiful, and boy is it important that it has survived the budget cuts and will be around for future generations to visit and enjoy. So let's end up with our visit to Ahjumawi. It started off a cloudy, overcast day and ended up being one of the most beautiful days I've ever spent in Northern California. We should never take our state park system for granted. It is so special. It is so wonderful. It is so worth saving and preserving and guarding and protecting for future generations. It's all about California's gold. It's all about California's golden parks. It was an adventure that started out in the rain, heading down a very muddy road. And to be honest with you, I wasn't very excited about spending a whole day getting wet and muddy. But you know, things have a way of working out for the best here in California. And even though I didn't realize it at the time, this day would end up being one of the most beautiful days I've ever experienced in one of our golden parks. Ah, springtime in Northern California. Here it is, a little overcast this morning. It's spitting rain, but we've got a beautiful view out here looking at the mountains off in the distance. Our guide for this adventure is Ranger Andrew Early. And Andrew, tell everybody what we're looking at right now, because I always get my directions a little mixed up when I get up here.
We're in the Cascade Range. The mountains that would be visible if it was a little clearer are Mount Shasta to the north and Mount Lassen to the south.
So Mount Shasta is over there in the clouds somewhere.
It's hidden today.
All right, but it's a beautiful day. This really gives you we've got two hawks in the trees over there. This is a beautiful part of our state. But I got to tell you, the place that we're starting the adventure this morning has raised some questions in my mind, because you told us to meet you at a place called Rat
Farm.
Rat Farm, and I think that needs a little bit of an explanation.
Yes, we affectionately call this the Rat Farm, which is the takeoff point to access Ahjumawi. And it's called a rat farm because it was formerly a commercial muskrat farm.
Ah, muskrat.
Yes, so that makes it sound a little better than just rat.
Now, they were raising muskrats here when?
I'm not sure the years, but it's been a lot of years since it stopped. When they ended this rat farm production, apparently the owners just turned the muskrats loose. And they have been a problem in this Fall River Valley ever since.
Why are they a problem?
Well, they undermine foundations, they help to erode levees, they cause a lot of destruction to the human-made things.
So we've got some pesky muskrats out there.
Yes, and we might see some today out on the water.
Good, okay, because our adventure is going to take us to what I think must be one of the most remote state parks in California. It's so remote that you literally can't get there by road, can you?
That's true. The only access to Ahjumawi is across this body of water, which is called Big Lake, and it's by canoe or boat. At this time, any type of boat is allowed on the lake.
Well, this is very exciting. We have two boats for our trip. Here in the front, you and I are going to be in this canoe, and Robert, give us a wave, Robert. Robert is going to be driving the motorized boat for Cameron, our cameraman, to be in to record all of this. And we're literally just going to take off out into the wilderness here to get to Ahjumawi Lava Springs State Park. What does Ahjumawi mean?
Ahjumawi means where the waters come together.
So that's an old Indian word.
It is.
From which tribe?
It's the Ahjumawi band of the Pit River tribe.
Wow, so this goes way back in history, what we're going to be doing today.
Exactly.
All right, this is exciting. We're taking off out into this state park that literally the only way you can get there is the way we're going to get there today.
I love you, California. You're the greatest state of all. I love you in the winter, summer, spring, and in the fall. I love your fertile valleys, your dear mountains I adore. I love your grand old ocean, and I love a rugged.
Boy, this is so beautiful out here. Where is the park itself?
Our canoe is heading straight towards the park.
So this is the park over here. And what does the park consist of? I'm having a hard time figuring out what we're going to see today.
Well, the park is 6,000 acres in size, and about 2/3 of it is covered with just bare recent lava flows. The third that you're seeing in front of you by the shoreline is the forested and heavily vegetated part.
So the lava flows have been shot out from all these big mountains that are surrounding us here over the years.
Yes, the Cascade Range.
You know, this is probably the most isolated feeling I have ever had in a state park. How many, and I haven't seen another soul today, how many people visit this park every year?
Our visitation's about 4,000 people a year.
Wait a minute, 4,000 a year?
Well, it's not for everybody. You know, not everybody wants to paddle in a mile or two just to get to a place.
And what do they do when they get here?
Hiking and bird watching are probably two of the most popular activities. And there are campsites, 9 environmental sites available for overnight camping.
on a clear day, it must be amazing out here. You can see, well, you can see Mount Lassen, you can see Mount Shasta, you can see the whole mountain range out here.
You sure can. It may even open up for us later today. Huel, as we're paddling along, keep your eye on the shoreline, because we might see a bear.
A bear?
A bear. Usually it starts out as just like a big brown blob or a black blob, and then it kind of takes form and runs off into the woods.
So there's bear up there.
It's truly a wild place.
What else is up there?
Well, there's bear and there's mountain lion. Those are probably the biggest animals that you'll find. A lot of deer. Many of the smaller or medium-sized mammals, foxes, coyotes, bobcats, skunks, river otter, muskrat.
Wait a minute, wait a minute. What are these birds up here?
White pelicans.
Oh, wow. They're circling over the forest there.
Yeah, we might have startled them.
Look at that. Oh, they're beautiful. Now you got me looking for bear.
Yeah, the bears that I have seen here are truly wild. I startled a young bear once when I came around a corner, and the look in his eyes was like he'd never seen a human before. And he turned and ran, and it was like a cannonball that was shot through the forest. He just went in a straight line through trees and brush and vegetation as far as he could away from me.
So he was running away from you, not toward you?
No, I think I scared him as much as he scared me.
If there are only 4,000 or 5,000 people a year here, there are probably never more than 3 or 4 boats out here at one time, right?
Well, in the summertime we do get a little more visitation than that. But this is really a perfect time to be here.
Why?
Well, one downside about the summer is that the mosquitoes are abundant.
Ah!
Voracious and abundant.
Is this a new state park?
It's a relatively new state park. It became a state park in 1983.
I'm looking for muskrat holes.
I believe those are all muskrat holes.
So the muskrats live right up here on the shore?
Yes, burrowing into the bank.
And how do we get out of the boat? There's no place to dock.
You're right, it's not easy.
So you don't have any docks per se for people to...
No.
We're coming in, and boy, this is nature's boat dock right here.
Nature's boat dock.
There's nothing fancy about this. Before we start our land adventure, Andrew has some safety tips for us, starting with these plants right here, which look perfectly harmless to me from a distance.
When you visit Ahjumawi, there are several things that you have to be very careful of. First, when you get out of the boat, the plant that you will find abundantly along the shoreline is stinging nettle. It causes a rash and irritation of your skin if you get into it.
Boy, that'll cut down on park visitation right away, won't it?
Yeah, there's a few other things that I should warn visitors about. Would you like to hear about those?
Yes, I think so.
There's really 6 things, so 5 others. We have 1 plant, 2 insects, 2 animals, and 1 reptile.
Uh-huh.
So the 2 insects, I've already warned you about mosquitoes.
Uh-huh.
Mosquitoes are abundant. They're a prominent feature of this park in, well, most any time of the year in the summer. Now, the other insect here is ticks. And ticks can be a threat anywhere that you're in nature, but you have to be careful and don't go off the trails, and you don't usually have a problem getting ticks on. Just check yourself once in a while.
Okay, mosquitoes, ticks, this plant right here.
Stinging nettle.
Stinging nettle.
And then bears and mountain lions.
Oh, absolutely.
Those are the mammals. And bears, like I say, they're truly wild, so they'll run away from you. Mountain lions are not a threat either, except if you bring small children. You don't want to leave your children unattended, and you want to go do the buddy system, have somebody with you. And then the last thing is rattlesnakes. In the summertime, it's hot. We average 90 degrees each day during the summer. And the rattlesnakes here are as black as the lava rock. So they're hard to see, and just rattlesnakes in general are kind of aggressive.
All right, we got our 6 we've got our 6 danger things to look out for, and now we're kind of in this little campground area, which is the way most people visit the park, right?
Correct.
Tell us what happens here.
Well, this state park has 9 campsites. They're grouped into 3 clusters of 3. And each of these is what's called an environmental site. So at the environmental site center, we have a restroom and trash cans. And then there are 3 sites that are spread out a little bit, and each one can accommodate up to 8 people.
So people come out here and camp, or people come out here and just picnic, or what?
They boat in. They bring their stuff in, and either with canoe, kayaks, or whatever they have, and they boat into their campsite.
Boy, look at this now. The clouds are breaking a little bit, and we're looking off in the distance at the blue sky and the reflection in the water, and it goes all the way around here. This is, boy, this really is spectacular. This, now that it's opening up a little bit, this really gives you an idea of how beautiful this park is.
It's a spectacular park.
Yeah.
And right now there's no reservations that are available to be made, so it's first come, first served here.
Yeah, and I'm looking over your head. There are 2 really big mosquitoes. Boy, they are huge. I thought that was a hummingbird up there. That's a mosquito?
No, mosquitoes are big, very big and abundant.
All right, now we're going to hike up here because we want to see the lava rock. That's what 2/3 of this park is.
Definitely.
How far is the hike?
It's about a half a mile from here to where we start into the lava flow.
All right, so we're hiking through the mountain lion country, the bear country, the mosquito country, the rattlesnake country.
And the ticks.
And the ticks. But what the heck? Before we got too far into the forest, we just wanted to stop here for just a second because it's amazing how quiet it is out here. No human sounds, but lots of birds. And if you get real quiet, you can just stand here and listen to the sounds, the natural sounds in this park. Are those geese?
Yes, Canadian geese.
Canadian geese.
Beautiful thing about this park is that we have no poison oak that we found anywhere in this park.
No poison oak.
That's right.
So that's one good thing to off-balance the 6 things you told us to be looking out for.
Things you have to watch out for.
And we had talked about the smells of this park, and this bush, and it's called a what?
A deer bush.
Deer bush. Oh,
deer
boy.
Brush.
Deer brush.
Yeah, deer brush.
I don't even know how to describe this, but it's
a very unusual smell.
Oh, boy, it's beautiful. Look at this. Well, look at this whole forest. But I would imagine when some people come here to the forest, they're a little intimidated by it, aren't they?
Oh, they are. Lack of amenities and the wild nature of this place does intimidate some people.
More beautiful spring wildflowers, but what's so interesting about this display is that when you look out here, you begin to get a hint of where we're heading to.
You can see the changing landscape here. From where we walked up from the shoreline, we're getting into an area that's getting less and less soil on it. It's more of the more recent volcanic rock flows. Oh, there's a good example of black basalt.
So this is what we're heading toward, a whole lava flow.
Just an open field of nothing but black rock.
And boy, this stuff is old and it's heavy.
It is.
Very heavy. But boy, let's get out of the way and take a look at this, because what a beautiful display of lava rock surrounded by the wildflowers of spring. And then you pull out and you see the forest in the background. Actually, we're in a transition zone right here, aren't we?
That's right. And you can see where the forest we just walked through was much more heavily wooded. And then as we walk this direction, you'll see there's less trees, getting more into the shrubs. And then as we go on, we're going to go into an area where the shrubs start dying back, and it's just bare rock.
Oh!
Watch your step.
We have found the lava flow. Big time, Andrew.
That's true. 2/3 of the park is covered with lava, similar to this, with a little bit of vegetation growing in it.
Now, what happened? Did this come up? Was this shot up out of a volcano?
Well, geologists say that in this area, most of the lava came from fissures, openings, cracks in the earth where it kind of oozed out more than came out of volcanoes.
Boy, this rock is very hard.
And it's very sharp.
And very sharp, and this is where the snakes like to live in the summertime.
Oh, this is the best place for a snake.
Boy, this, I don't think I've ever seen a flow. Is this called a flow?
Yes.
And what makes it a flow? Just because it flows out across
Just came out and dried kind of like in sheets over the land.
Boy, this is something. This is an amazing rock to look at up close. Because really they're like cinders in somebody's fireplace, like
exactly,
coal
yeah.
cinders.
This one does have a little moss growing on it.
Wow, it's just, these are just, can you use these for anything? Can you build with them?
Well, you can't gather from a state park.
No, I know
Everything's
that.
protected in the state park, but this is the rock that's used a lot of times in landscaping and for walls.
Well, we'll leave it here and just take a look out here at this whole field of it. And this is just really a small percentage of the amount of lava rock that's here, right?
Correct.
But it's half of the name of the park.
Ahjumawi Lava Springs State Park.
Okay, so we've seen the lava, and now we're going to see the spring.
Let's go on to the springs.
Well, we've come back to the water. In fact, oh, look at that fish jump. Oh my gosh. One of the big trout jumped right on cue for us. We've come down the lake about a mile, and now it's the sun has come out. We've shed some of our layers of clothing, and Andrew, you have brought us to this tree over here, this beautiful flowering apple tree. Is this an apple tree?
This is an apple tree. As in many of our state parks, the pioneers and settlers that have been here prior to becoming state parks, some signs of their habitation are still here today.
So this was planted by whoever lived in this little cabin right here. Does this have a name to it? What does the park call this?
It was referred to as the Trapper's Cabin. And the best we can tell on this is the last owners who gave the land to the state were Harry and Ivy Horr, H-O-R-R. And they leased this land out and let people use this for trappers, hunters, people visiting here.
Boy, what a wonderful look at what they were looking at out their front yard. This is like some kind of a scenic postcard right here. This is as beautiful a sight as I think I've seen anywhere in California. But if we move just a little bit further down, isn't it, through the up and around here, we're going to see something else that's kind of interesting.
Just around the corner.
Well, Andrew, you saved the best for the last, because I didn't think it could get any prettier than what we have seen already. But you have now brought us to explain to us the springs part of the title of this state park. Explain to us where we are right now, because this is fascinating right here.
Ahjumawi Lava Springs State Park. In the name itself is the word lava springs. There are thousands of natural springs throughout this park that lead into the waterways. Again, Ahjumawi means where the waters come together. But as you can see, look down through the ancient fish traps here, and you can see the water is moving out. So the water is actually bubbling up from under the ground right here.
Now, what do you mean ancient fish traps? Because that's a part of the layer of the history. These are all placed here by, I mean, they're not here naturally, are they?
That's correct. Ahjumawi is the name for the Native American group that was here. And so to honor them and their presence, we gave the state park that name. What they used to do is they would herd fish. They would get a group of people out in the water when the fish came spawning, which was in the winter, and they would come in here and they would get people to herd them in through the different waterways and go from a larger area and then put the rocks up behind them, bring them into a smaller area, put the rocks up behind them, and bring them in until they were in the shallow pools, just kind of boiling with the fish.
So this is a series of dams right here. Oh, look, this really gives you a shot of it right here. Exactly. It's a series of dams looking all the way out to the lake.
Exactly. They would start out there, and it's only about waist deep, the water out there. They'd herd the fish in till they could get them into an area where they could collect them.
And they would bring them, say, all the way into, right into here.
Exactly.
Now, are these still functioning fish traps?
Yes, the Ahjumawi people who still live in this area and live adjacent to what is now the state park called Ahjumawi still use these traps in the wintertime to collect fish.
Wow. And this has got to go back hundreds of years, if not thousands of years, being done just like this.
Exactly.
This is, you know, this is such an interesting combination of native history, of human history, combined with the natural beauty of this park. This kind of sums it up right here, doesn't it?
This is truly a gem of a state park and a spectacular wild place.
Okay, we're ending up here at a place called
Jiaxi
Springs.
Yes.
Because this, again, is another one of these. Oh, look at this. Oh, gosh. Oh, my. Oh. Look at the fish in the water. They've got to be 1, 2, 3, 4. They've got to be 20. Are those trout?
No, I don't think those are trout. I think those are the sucker fish.
Oh, I got excited about sucker fish?
Well, they're still beautiful. Look at the size of them.
But you can't eat them, can you?
They're not considered a good eating species.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm excited about almost anything today because I had heard that this was a great place to come fishing.
But look at the
for
clarity
trout.
of the water here.
Yeah.
I mean, where on earth can you find water like that?
And what does it do? This is the spring here.
This is one of the series of freshwater springs that leads into the Tule River and then the Fall River.
Look at this.
And you can see the volume of water coming out of this spring-fed lake.
And it goes all the way out here. What was the name of the lake, the big lake
It's
here?
called Big Lake.
Oh my gosh, there went another fish jumping over there. Now that was a trout.
That was probably a trout.
But look at the clarity of this water. It is so clean and so pure.
You know, I should tell you where this water goes. All of this water that comes through the springs here leads into this is where the waters come together. Remember, Ahjumawi. And it leads into the Fall River, which leads into the Pitt River, which leads into the Sacramento River, which goes down the state and out in the bay, under the delta there, under the Bay Bridge.
Wow. So it's all connected.
It's all connected. And the water is the common thread that connects it all.
Well, the common thread that also connects it all is its beauty, its remoteness, the fact that you have to want to get here, and the fact that when you do get here, you can have an experience like we've had here today. We have had a wonderful day here. Thank you so much. It started off with the clouds and with the rain, and it ended up with the blue skies and the big clouds and this beautiful scenery here. I mean, everywhere we've gone today has just gotten better and better and better. It's just been a wonderful day. I hope you've had as much fun as we have right here in this wonderful park, Ahjumawi Park, which is one of California's golden parks.
I love you, California. You're the greatest state of all. I love you in the winter, summer, spring, and in the fall. I love your fertile valleys, your dear mountains I adore. I love your grand old oceans, and I love a rugged shore.
The following was a special edition of California's Golden Parks and was seen exclusively on KIXE television as part of their ongoing support of our California state parks.